They say your life can change in an instant, but that's not true. It can be ended in an instant. My life, the one where I was Jackson Smith, the good son, the loyal brother, ended on a Saturday, somewhere between the main course and dessert. It was ended by a lie, delivered by my 16-year-old adoptive sister Anne, her voice trembling as she accused me, her 17-year-old brother, of putting the baby in her belly. The lie was immediately followed by the crack of my father's fist against my face, the cold finality of the floor, and an expulsion that threw me into a 10-year winter. This isn't a story about reconciliation. This is a story about how I survived their execution and built a new life from the ashes, and how when they finally came crawling back, I found my vindication not in forgiveness, but in cold, quiet, beautiful indifference. That Saturday had started with the scent of roasted garlic and thyme, the familiar warmth of our large family gatherings. I'd spent the morning helping my dad change the oil in his truck, the smell of grease on my hands, the easy camaraderie of a son who believed he was loved. I remember laughing with my brother Jake, setting the extra chairs around the long dining table. I had even helped Anne with her algebra homework just 2 nights before, her frustration and my patient explanations filling the quiet kitchen. I was the good son, the reliable one, the safe harbor. I was the one who taught her to ride her bike, who defended her from bullies. I was family. I believed in the unconditional love that house was supposed to represent. I was a fool. The clinking of silverware stopped, a silence so profound it was deafening. Every eye turned to Anne. She was trembling, a practiced theatrical shake. She looked at our mother, tears already streaming. I can't keep this a secret. My mother's face softened. What is it, sweetie? And then Anne's eyes, cold and terrified, met mine. I'm pregnant. A collective gasp. My father started to stand up, his face confused. Who? He demanded. Anne's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried like a gunshot. It's Jackson. He did this to me. The air left the room. My mind couldn't even process the words. Me? I stared at her, a laugh of pure confusion trapped in my throat. I saw her look away, and in that microsecond, I knew it was a lie. But the truth didn't matter. I never got to speak. I never got to deny it. Before I could even form the word what, my father's chair scraped back violently. He crossed the 10 feet between us in a single stride, his face a mask of purple rage. It wasn't a slap. It was a punch. A full-bodied, closed-fist strike from a man I worshipped. A man who had taught me to shave. The impact was a wet, sharp crack. It sent me flying backward out of my chair. My head struck the hardwood floor, the impact vibrating through my skull. I tasted copper and salt, the immediate shocking bloom of blood in my mouth. The polished wood was cold against my cheek, and for a second, all I could hear was a high-pitched ringing. Then, the chorus began. My mother didn't rush to me. She didn't ask if I was okay. She let out a terrible, wounded cry and ran to Anne, pulling the weeping accuser into her arms. My baby, my poor baby, she cried, glaring at me on the floor as if I were a venomous snake. My brother Jake, 2 years my senior, stepped over me. He looked down, his face twisted in disgust, and spat. The saliva landed on the floorboards just an inch from my face. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins, I saw their faces, one after another, turning away in contempt. No trial, no questions, just immediate, absolute judgment. My identity, my entire history as their son, their nephew, their brother, was executed in less than 30 seconds. The blue and red lights flashing through the dining room windows felt like a violation, painting the walls in grotesque, shifting colors. 2 police officers stood on the porch, their faces grim, questioning me while my family watched from the doorway. Did you touch your sister, son? I was 17, my lip was split open, my jaw throbbed, and I was being questioned like a criminal in my own home. I denied it, but my voice shook. I had no evidence, only the truth. They let me go. Not enough to hold him, but the damage was done. I called my girlfriend Sarah from my car. Her voice was thin, cold. I heard what happened, Jackson. Don't ever call me again. The click of the phone disconnecting was the sound of another door slamming shut. I drove around for an hour. my mind a blank, static fog. When I returned, the front door was locked. My key wouldn't turn. Then I saw it. Sitting on the front lawn, gleaming wetly under the porch light, was my black canvas duffel bag. Next to it, a single black trash bag. My clothes, my toothbrush, my textbooks, everything I owned. I pounded on the door, the pain in my jaw flaring. "Dad! Mom, let me in! She's lying!" The porch light clicked on, blinding me. My father's voice, muffled but shaking with rage, came through the solid wood. "You are not my son!" he roared. "You are a monster! Get off my property before I call the police again!" I backed away from the door, my hands shaking. I looked up at the window of my own bedroom, the one I'd had since I was 4, and I saw her, my mother. She was standing there, a silhouette against the light. She was watching me. She saw me see her. She didn't wave. She didn't cry. She just watched for a second, and then she turned her back, clutching Anne, who was standing beside her, and walked away from the window, pulling the curtain closed. That, more than the punch, more than the bags on the lawn, was the moment my heart broke. The turning of her back, the final erasure. I threw my bags into the back of my beat-up '98 sedan. I had $74 in my wallet and half a tank of gas. I didn't know where to go. I just knew I had to leave. I drove, the streetlights blurring through the tears I refused to let fall. I drove until the suburbs turned into city, and the city turned into dark, unfamiliar highways. I drove until the E on the gas gauge was a mocking red line. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died on a gravel shoulder, miles from anywhere. I was 17. I was homeless. I was destitute. And as the cold of the night seeped through the thin metal of the car, I understood. Jackson Smith was dead. He had been murdered by his own family. The first night in the car was the coldest I have ever been. It was a damp, bone-chilling cold that seeped into my jeans and settled in my marrow. I woke up every 20 minutes, my neck cramped into a permanent knot from sleeping against the window, the vinyl of the seat sticking to my skin. The smell was the worst part, a mix of old upholstery, my own stale sweat, and the sharp, metallic tang of fear. I remember watching the sun come up, a dirty gray light revealing a town I didn't recognize. My stomach was a hollow, aching void. I was alone. The full, crushing weight of that isolation settled on me. I was a monster. They had told me so. And monsters don't get to be warm or safe or fed. 2 days passed. The $74 was gone, spent on gas station coffee and a blanket that did almost nothing. The hunger was no longer an ache. It was a dizzying, nauseating weakness. My head swam. I found myself parked behind a strip mall, watching people throw away half-eaten food in a fast food dumpster. Shame is a powerful thing, but starvation is stronger. I waited until the parking lot was empty, and I climbed in. The smell of rotting lettuce and grease was suffocating. I found a half-eaten burger, still warm. I ate it, hunched over, crying. The self-loathing was a physical sickness. This is what I was. This is what they had made me. I was ready to give up. I was just sitting in my car, staring blankly, when I saw the sign. A small, greasy diner called The Junction. A piece of cardboard was taped to the window. Dishwasher wanted. Ask within. I hadn't showered in 3 days. I smelled like a dumpster. I reeked of car living and desperation. But I had nothing left to lose. I walked in. The owner, a big man with a graying beard and hands permanently stained with something dark, was yelling at a cook. He looked at me, his eyes scanning me from head to toe. I could see the disgust. "What?" he growled. My voice was a croak. The sign, dishwasher. He stared at me for a long, agonizing second. Then he just jerked his head toward the back. "Don't steal, don't be late, and don't whine." His name was Andy. He didn't ask for my last name. He didn't ask for a resume. He just pointed to a mountain of filth in a stainless steel sink. The water was scalding hot. The industrial soap was caustic, and it made my raw hands sting. But the rhythm of the work, the reality of it, was grounding. Scrub, rinse, stack, scrub, rinse, stack. It was a physical problem I could solve. I worked for 12 hours straight. I didn't speak. I just worked until my back felt like it would snap. At the end of the shift, Andy shoved a plate across the steel counter. A burger and a mountain of fries. "Eat," he ordered. It was the first act of kindness I'd received since my life ended. I ate so fast I almost choked. I slept in my car in the diner's back lot for another week. I was there at 5 a.m., waiting for him to unlock the door. I was the last one to leave after mopping the floors until they shone. I was a ghost, fueled by coffee and desperation. At the end of the week, Andy tossed a key onto the counter. It clattered loudly in the quiet kitchen. "Room above the diner. It's empty." I stared at him. "It's a shithole," he said. "Smells like onions. I'm taking $100 a week out of your pay for it. Don't make me regret this, kid." I walked up the rickety back stairs. The room was tiny. It had a cot, a sink, and a single light bulb. It was the most beautiful place I had ever seen. It had a lock on the door. I was safe. This new town was small. People talk. The waitresses would whisper. Where'd he come from? What's his story? I could feel the old ice closing in. The familiar sensation of being watched, judged. I was sure someone would eventually connect the dots, see an old news post, recognize my face. I lived in constant fear of the rumors finding me. I waited every day for Andy to call me into his tiny, smoke-filled office and tell me to get out. The monster label felt like it was tattooed on my forehead, visible to everyone. I just kept my head down, scrubbing pans until my fingers bled. One afternoon, Andy did call me in. My stomach turned to acid. This was it. I sat in the chair opposite his desk, which was piled high with invoices. He didn't look at me. He was just signing checks. "I'm hearing stories, kid," he said, his voice a low growl. I braced, my hands gripping the armrests. "Hearing you might be some kind of trouble. The girls up front are spooked." I couldn't breathe. I just waited for the axe to fall. He finally stopped writing and looked at me, his eyes sharp. "I don't care what they say," he said, his voice flat. "You're here at 5. You scrub until your hands are raw. You haven't stolen a dime. You work hard. That's what counts." He tossed an invoice at me. "Now get back to work." He didn't care about my past. He cared about my work. It was oxygen to a drowning man. I worked for Andy for 2 years. I moved from dishwasher to prep cook, then to the line. I learned the rhythm of the grill, the weight of the spatula, the timing of a perfect order. I saved every single dollar I didn't use for food or rent. Andy was a gruff, demanding boss, but he was fair. He was the first person in my life whose trust was transactional, not emotional. I didn't have to be his son. I just had to be reliable. It was a revelation, but I knew I couldn't flip burgers forever. I was building savings, but I wasn't building a future. I was just existing. The moment of change came on a brutal August afternoon. The diner's air conditioning unit died. It was 110 degrees in the kitchen. Andy was on the phone, screaming at a repair company. A technician finally showed up, a guy not much older than me. I watched him, fascinated, as he worked on the rooftop unit. He was methodical, confident. He was diagnosing a complex system, a puzzle of wires, refrigerant, and metal. He was a problem solver. I realized, watching him, that that was what I wanted to be. I didn't want to just survive. I wanted to build. I wanted to fix things. I asked Andy about it. "You like that?" he grunted, wiping sweat from his forehead. I nodded. "Better money than this," he said. It turned out he knew the owner of the HVAC company. He made a call. "Got a kid here, Jackson. He's solid, works hard." He listened for a minute. "Yeah, he's smart enough. Give him a shot." He hung up and looked at me. "You start Monday, apprentice, don't embarrass me." Just like that, he'd given me a trade. He had become the father my own father had failed to be, not with love, but with practical, life-saving respect. The new work was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Being an HVAC apprentice is not a glorious job. It's hell. It was crawling in suffocating, fiberglass-filled attics in the middle of summer, the heat pressing in, sweat stinging my eyes, the insulation sticking to my skin like tiny invisible needles. It was shivering in frozen crawl spaces in January, my fingers so numb I could barely hold the wrench, the cold metal biting into my skin until it was raw. It was lifting heavy furnace units, my muscles screaming in protest. It was exhausting. It was perfect. I came home every night too tired to think, too tired to remember. I learned to love the smells that meant I was building a life, the sharp, sterile scent of refrigerant oil, the acrid smell of a soldering torch hitting copper pipe. the metallic taste of dust in the air. I loved the satisfaction of a puzzle solved, the confusion of a broken unit, the methodical tracing of schematics, the diagnosis, and finally, the powerful, satisfying thump and whoosh of a system kicking back to life. Every unit I fixed was a small victory. Every furnace I repaired was a tangible piece of evidence that I was useful. Unlike my past, this world was logical. This world made sense. Input, output, broken, fixed. I wasn't just working with my hands. I was building my mind. My nights were no longer for staring at the ceiling, reliving the punch. They were for study. I enrolled in night classes at the local community college. I devoured textbooks on thermodynamics, electrical theory, and fluid dynamics. My brain, which had been trapped in a circular loop of betrayal and pain, now had a new focus. I was becoming an expert. I was building an identity from scratch, one based on knowledge and competence, not on a family name that had been poisoned. Years began to blur. 4, then 5. The calluses on my hands became permanent. I moved from apprentice to technician. I got my certifications. I passed my master's exam. I bought my own truck, a used white panel van, and started taking my own jobs on the side. I moved out of the tiny room above the diner and into a small, clean apartment. It was the first place that was truly mine. I paid my bills on time. I had a savings account. It was a small, quiet, solitary life, but it was stable. It was a foundation I had laid myself, one brick at a time. I was 26 years old. I was on a rare day off, scrolling aimlessly on my phone. Social media was something I rarely used. A ghost of a past life. A people you may know suggestion popped up. My brother, Jake. I don't know why I clicked it. Curiosity, perhaps. A morbid desire to look into the window of the life that had cast me out. His profile was public, and there it was. A photo, posted just a week prior. A birthday party. The whole family, smiling, gathered around a cake. My father, beaming. My mother, her arm around Anne. And on Anne's lap, a little girl blowing out 10 candles. "Happy 10th birthday to my amazing daughter," Anne's caption read. I zoomed in on the photo. They all looked so happy, so normal. My father, older, grayer, but smiling with a pride that cut me to the bone. My mother, looking content. Jake, with his own wife and kid. And me. I wasn't just absent. I was erased. It was a perfect family portrait, and I had never been a part of it. The pain wasn't hot like it used to be. It was a cold, clarifying ache. I was a ghost to them. They had celebrated 10 years of the lie. 10 years of my erasure. They had built their happiness on top of my grave. That photograph was the final, symbolic break. Jackson Smith was their son. Jackson Smith was the monster. Jackson Smith was the phantom they had locked in their attic. He was the lie that held their happy family together. I looked at that photo for a long time, at the smiling faces of my executioners. Then I closed the app. I knew what I had to do. It wasn't enough to be gone. I had to be new. The next day, I went to the county courthouse. I filed the paperwork. It was a simple bureaucratic process. A few weeks and a few $100s later, a judge approved it. I walked out of that building, my old driver's license in my pocket, and got in my truck. I was no longer Jackson Smith. I had chosen a new name, a name that represented everything I had endured and everything I had become. I was Jackson Winter. I chose Winter for a reason, because that is what I had survived. I had lived for a decade in a cold, brutal, unrelenting season. I had learned to find warmth in the ice, to build a shelter from the frost. Winter wasn't a season of death to me. It was a season of resilience. It was the quiet, hard strength that endures. It was the stark, clean, honest cold. My old life had been a lie, a false summer. My new life was the truth of winter. With the new name came the final purge. I went to the bank and changed my accounts. I got a new driver's license. The photo showing a man, not a boy. A man with cold eyes and a hard mouth. I got a new social security card. I created a new email address, one that had no connection to my past. And I changed my phone number, the one I had kept for 10 years, half hoping, half dreading they would one day call. I cut the last thread. Jackson Smith was finally, officially dead and buried. I poured everything into my work. I used my savings and took out a loan, not from a bank, but from Andy. He just nodded and wrote the check. Pay me back when you can, kid. I started Winter HVAC Solutions. At first, it was just me, my van, and a box of business cards. I worked 18-hour days. I was relentless. I was reliable. I was honest. I never overcharged. I always showed up on time. I remembered Andy's words. You work hard. That's what counts. My reputation grew. My company grew. One van became 3. 3 became a fleet of 10. I had an office. I had a dispatcher. I had 12 employees. The smell of my office was new carpet and fresh coffee, not stale beer and onions. The weight in my hands was no longer a wrench, but the payroll checks I signed every Friday. The checks that supported 12 other families. I was a pillar of the community I had been dumped in. I was a man built from the ground up. I was 27 years old, 10 years, a full decade since I'd tasted my own blood on my father's dining room floor. I owned a successful business. I owned a small, clean condo. I had Andy, who I still met for breakfast every Sunday, paying him back with interest for the loan. I was quiet. I was stable. I was at peace. It was a cold peace, a solitary peace, but it was mine. I had no family. I had no girlfriend. I trusted my work, and I trusted Andy. It was enough. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was reviewing schematics for a big commercial job. My phone buzzed. An unknown number from my old area code. A jolt of pure adrenaline shot through me. I almost didn't answer. I hadn't received a call from that part of the state in 10 years, but I did. Hello? My voice was steady. Is this Jackson Smith? The name was a punch. My name is Jackson Winter, I said, my voice cold. Who is this? Mr. Winter. This is Detective Mileage from the police department. We've just arrested a Miss Anne, your adoptive sister. My blood turned to ice. She's been arrested for filing a false police report, an aggravated assault accusation against a co-worker. I said nothing. The detective continued, his voice heavy. During questioning, well, son, she had a breakdown. She confessed to everything, including what she did to you 10 years ago. She confessed it was all a lie. I hung up the phone. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt, still, a profound, absolute numbness. The truth was out. The words I had longed to hear for 10 years had finally been spoken, but they didn't change anything. They didn't give me back my youth. They didn't erase the night in the car, or the taste of the dumpster burger, or the years of relentless, grinding work. It wasn't a celebration. It was just a fact. The lie was dead, and I was simply empty. The numbness lasted for exactly 1 hour. Then my phone rang again. A different number, but the same area code. I knew instinctively who it was. I answered. Jackson? The voice was older, weaker, but unmistakable. It was my mother. Jackson. Oh, Jackson, baby. We just heard. We got a call from the police. I said nothing. I just listened to her breathe, the sound of her starting to cry. Oh, God, Jackson. We didn't know. She fooled us all. She fooled us all, baby. We made such a terrible mistake. The excuses, the pathetic justification, after 10 years of silence. We didn't know. The most insidious lie of all. Your father, he's a wreck, she continued, her voice wet with tears. We need to see you. I want to see my son. My son. The words were poison. I'm making your favorite, she whispered, a desperate, pitiful attempt at connection. The 4-cheese casserole, can you come home? We can fix this. I finally spoke. My voice was calm. It was so calm, it scared me. You are 10 years too late, I said. You didn't not know. You chose. You watched me get kicked out. You turned your back. She started to sob. No, baby, please. I cut her off. Don't call this number again. I hung up the phone. I blocked her number. A week later, the ghosts kept rattling their chains. A message request on my company's Facebook page. I never checked it, but my dispatcher forwarded it to me. It was from Jake, my brother, the one who had spat at my feet. Hey, man, Jackson. Wow, crazy news, huh? His casual tone was like acid. Listen, I guess I owe you a huge apology. We're all totally wrecked over here. Anne really did a number on everyone. On everyone. As if he were the victim. Dad he's not doing good. His health. We should really talk. Get a beer. I read the message. Every word a tiny, stinging insect. I didn't reply. I just clicked block user. The big one came a few days after that. I was in my office reviewing a new schematic for a commercial cooling tower. My receptionist, Sarah, buzzed me on the intercom. Her voice was nervous, shaky. "Mr. Winter, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's a man here, in the lobby. He says he's your father. He doesn't have an appointment and he won't leave." My blood pressure didn't even rise. I simply swiveled my chair to look at the security monitor feed of the lobby. And there he was, older, grayer, a little stooped, but the same face. The same self-righteous arrogance in his posture. The man who had broken my jaw. I watched him on the screen for a long, silent moment. He was pacing, agitated, demanding to see me. He was in my lobby, on my property, the building I had built. I pressed the button on the intercom. My voice was clear and steady. "Sarah, please call building security." Her voice was a small squeak. "Mr. Winter? Call security," I repeated, "and tell them there is a man in the lobby who is trespassing and harassing my staff. Have them remove him." I didn't raise my voice. I just gave an order. I watched the whole thing on the monitor. I didn't go down. I didn't confront him. I just watched. 2 uniformed security guards approached him. He tried to wave them off. "I'm his father. I'm here to see my son." The guards were professional. "Sir, you've been asked to leave." He got loud then. The old, familiar rage. "Jackson!" he bellowed, looking up at the security camera as if he knew I was watching. "Jackson, I'm your father. I'm proud of you. Look at this place. I'm so proud." Proud. That word from him. It was the most obscene thing I'd ever heard. The guards didn't care. They each took an elbow, firmly, and began to escort him toward the glass doors. His face crumpled, the rage replaced by a sudden, shocked disbelief. He couldn't understand. He was the patriarch. He was the one who held the power of judgment. And he was being physically removed like a drunk from my world. He was yelling my name as they pushed him out onto the sidewalk. "Jackson, please!" I watched until he was on the curb. Then I turned back to my schematic. The cooling tower design was interesting. My lawyer arranged the next meeting. I needed to hear it from her. I went to the county prison. The visiting room smelled of stale disinfectant and despair. She was led in, wearing an orange jumpsuit. She was pale, thin, the manipulative spark that had burned down my life now just a guttering, desperate ember. She saw me and burst into tears. "Jackson, Jackson, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." She cried for a full minute. I just sat, my hands flat on the table, and waited. I felt nothing. When she finally quieted down, I asked her the only question that had mattered for 10 years. The question that had haunted my nights in the car. "Why? Why me? You could have picked anyone. Why me?" She wouldn't look me in the eye. She stared at her hands, cuffed to the table. "Because," she whispered, her voice cracking, "because you were safe." I froze. You were the good one. You were kind. I knew you wouldn't really hurt me. I knew they'd believe me." It was a punch, harder than my father's. She chose me because I was kind. She weaponized my love for her. She wasn't done. The final, bitter wound. "I'm so sorry," she wept again. They're still protecting me, even now." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "My daughter," she whispered. Our daughter. She still doesn't know the truth. They haven't told her. They're telling everyone else it was a misunderstanding, but they're protecting my relationship with my daughter. They're still lying for me." They had learned nothing. They weren't protecting me, the innocent one. They were protecting her, the liar, to preserve the happy family facade. They were still choosing her. I stood up. The metal legs of the chair scraped loudly, grotesquely on the concrete floor. The sound echoed in the small room. She looked up, her eyes wide with panic. "Jackson, please, say something. Please, forgive me." I looked down at her, the monster who had murdered my life, and I felt nothing, just a vast, cold emptiness. I didn't say a word. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just turned my back on her, just as my mother had turned her back on me, and I walked out of the visiting room, leaving her alone with her apology. My lawyer found the other victim, the man Anne had accused this time, the coworker. His life had been shattered, too. He'd lost his job, his wife. We joined together in a civil suit. Not against Anne. She had nothing. We sued my parents. For defamation, for slander, for complicity in the destruction of my life, and for the 10 lost years. It was brutal. It was public. And we won. The judge's ruling was scathing. The vindication was absolute, a matter of public record. My name wasn't just cleared, it was avenged. The settlement was large. I gave my entire share to the other victim. His life was in pieces, and he needed it to rebuild. I didn't. I already had my life. I had my business. I had my peace. I went back to my condo. I made a pot of coffee, the good kind, the expensive beans. I sat on my small balcony overlooking the city I now considered my home, a city that didn't know Jackson Smith. I wasn't happy. Happiness is a hot, loud emotion. I was still. I was quiet. I was free. The winter was over, but I had become the cold, and I was fine with that. About a year later, my phone buzzed, a restricted number. I usually ignore them, but I answered. It was a voicemail. It took a moment for the new number to register. I listened. The voice was a shallow, wet rasp. It was my father. "Jackson," he wheezed. "Please. Son, I'm sick. The doctors, it's not good. I'm dying, Jackson." He took a ragged breath. I need to hear your voice. I just want to ask you to forgive me. Please." Before the message ended, he was begging. The man who had called me a monster, who had punched me, who I'd had removed from my property, he was dying. I stood there in my quiet apartment, the message replaying in my head. Forgive me. He wasn't asking for forgiveness for me. He was asking for it for himself. He wanted to die with a clean conscience. He wanted absolution. He wanted me to make him feel better about his own monstrous act. I listened to the sound of his ragged, dying breath one more time. I thought about the cold floor. I thought about the taste of the dumpster burger. I thought about Andy's trust. I thought about the smell of copper pipe. I held the phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I pressed delete. I picked up my keys, checked the day's schedule for my HVAC crews, and I went to work. My name is Jackson Winter, and I am my own man.